Welcome to On the Rec Yard, Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the rec yard every. Hey, y'all, it is Wednesday night, and we are on the Rec Yard, Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
We are so happy to be with y'all tonight, and truly, this week has been a madhouse, and this is our favorite time of the week, is being in community with our On the Rec Yard family. Thank y'all for hopping in and joining. Thank you for commenting and liking the live. Thank you for sharing the live. And if you are listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasts, please share our podcast and leave a review. That helps our show reach an even broader audience. Tonight, we are talking about surviving the holidays after prison, because the holidays are stressful anyway.
Yeah,
But coming out of the penitentiary, they can be really particularly challenging.
yeah, for sure. Well, that being said, can we update people? Let's do our update so we could talk about Thanksgiving.
You want me to do this? Hey, Toonchi, let's.
Well done. You did that one pretty well this time. There was no glitch. There was. You've got
I don't know what happens when there's a glitch. I don't know. What was our update since last week? Thanksgiving happened.
Well, I saw you drinking out of that cup, and I realized that I still haven't ordered your Lioness mug. Tell people what happened to it.
Well, I have a Lioness Justice Impacted Women's Alliance coffee cup. It makes me feel powerful to drink from that coffee cup. If you are a formerly incarcerated person in Texas, you need one of those mugs, because when you pour your coffee into that, it emboldens you to fight the system.
Well, God, you
Um,
make me want to go get my coffee now.
it's factual. It's the visual. It's having it in my hand. It's like rocket fuel for advocacy. And I, as you all may remember, I have a broken foot, and I am navigating my house on a knee scooter,
Mm.
which apparently requires a little bit of balance. And I have this little basket on the front of the scooter, so like when I leave my desk and I'm going to the other side of the house, I put whatever I need, like my coffee cup to get more coffee. It was in my basket, and I go into the kitchen and I realize, oh, well, also the laundry needs changed. And so I go into the laundry room and I'm changing the laundry and somehow lose my balance, and I end up on the ground, and the cup flies out and is broken into a million pieces. And before I eat, not a million, that's false, but enough pieces that I couldn't no longer use it. And before I even got off the ground, I hit my knee. By the way, it hurts. It's so sore. My other knee, the opposite knee on the good leg. Like, I need one good leg, people. And I took a picture of the mug before I even set up, and I sent it before I even got up off the ground. I sent the picture to Toonchi, and I sent it to my wife, just so they could know, and feel so bad for me.
You know what, and I do, and this happened right before Thanksgiving, so I did it. I did lose it among the stuff I needed to do. But let's talk about Thanksgiving. What we all did on Thanksgiving. What'd you do?
Well, yeah. Well, on Thanksgiving, first of all, you sent me a message saying I'll order you a new one. And my wife sent me a message after that saying, I'll order you a new mug right away. And I said, don't worry about it, honey. Toonchi's got me.
Do you
And now
see how I tried to pivot away from that
yes,
conversation
now
into
I'm
our
finding
Thanksgiving?
tonight that indeed you did not order me one. So it's going to be even longer before I have that. Watching from Facebook, and they said they worked in corrections for 25 years and 3 states, Texas, TDCJ, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota, and in your opinion, the most stressful and difficult week for staff and people incarcerated was the week of Thanksgiving, and I don't know that I disagree with that. Um, it was pretty stressful in there lots of times, but that week, kind of the entry into this whole entire season, I remember feeling such a mix of emotions, um, for sure.
Yeah, it
So,
was. I mean, I would. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was for staff. I think emotionally it was hard on the day of a holiday, but well, I guess it was stressful because we were really, really, really short staffed around the holidays.
yeah, very much so. So, it's like short-staffed, and then personally, for me, I'm thinking about that week of Thanksgiving. There's it's like bittersweet. The kitchen workers are all like really getting getting to work and making a great meal for us and planning, and they're busy, and that brings some excitement because they're coming back from work telling us like, "Hey, we're working on, empanadas, and we're working on pumpkin pie," and and we would be it would bring a level of excitement because it was something that was different, and that was fun, but also just being away. And this was kind of the entrance into this entire the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks of my kids were gonna be out of school, and I'm here. Doing Santa Claus was a tradition we did pre-prison me, and so these kind of things, the realization that you're missing another year, or your first year, or, you know, that it's all just this weird mix of excitement and grief and um, all of that. So yeah, I can agree. And then on top of that, the the schedule in the prison was Willy Wonka because we were short-staffed big time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, well, this Thanksgiving was a little exciting for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife and I left the house at about 8 in the morning, and we drove down to Lockhart, Texas, where we had Friendsgiving. We met my podcast co-host, Toonchi, and her wife. Well, her wishes her wife, right? Um, and, some of our other friends, and we had a really good time. Our little, lion cub was there, Peach's baby was there, and so, we got to love on her and spoil her with, some gifts, and, we made a silly TikTok, but mostly we sat around and talked about whatever the heck we wanted, and whatever we don't have to have a filter on when it's just us who have been locked up. Even though, like, Tunch and I didn't do time together, we still speak the same language of Texas women's prisons, and so there was no filter. We just got to really be really raw and laugh and have fun. It was good.
Yeah, Belinda texted me later, and Belinda was there. You know, she did over 30 years, and this was, yeah, it was her first Thanksgiving home, and so that was really incredible, right? Like I grew up with Belinda, so here is this person that I've known for, oh gosh, it feels very much like half my life. And she made deviled eggs for me in prison, like during lockdown, during the holidays, like it just was such an incredible feeling to have all of y'all that was family to me. Y'all are family. Y'all are my chosen family. And it did feel like I told Belinda, she texted me and she said, I had such a great time. And I said, me too. I said, this is the best Thanksgiving I've had since I was a child. Like, honestly, it really was. And I did eat a whole tray. Me and Peaches tore them deviled eggs up. We ate until we couldn't eat anymore. And you got the baby a cell phone. So
I did.
she
Well,
was
it was
snapping pictures, cheese, and just taking pictures of our ear and the wall and everything else. So it was great.
It was a toddler's cell phone, to be fair. It wasn't like she's not gonna be able to call 911 or strangers or anything. But I think she liked it, and, I hope she did, and, it was a really good time, and, just getting to see, like, my wife playing with the baby on the couch and, just everybody. It was so good, and Lori, opened her home up to us, and which isn't an easy thing to do, to open your home up to a bunch of folks that have been to prison because people that been to prison, like, we notice everything, and she just took such care in preparing her home for us, and it was wonderful. It felt very much like family. It was really good, and then, on our way home, we got to stop by and see my oldest son and, his sweet boyfriend. They had made a full meal. Do you know they made a turkey and a ham? And I got there, they were, like, doing it up, macaroni and cheese, and I messaged them from the Friendsgiving and said, "Hey, there's some desserts here. This is what I brought. Do you want me to bring you the rest?" And they immediately were like, "Yeah, cheesecake. Bring the
Mm.
cheesecake." So, yeah.
And that
It
banana pudding, and,
Yeah. Gmo's banana pudding.
there
Yeah.
just was a lot of great food, and, I made a pumpkin pie.
You didn't make a pumpkin pie, honey. You bought a pumpkin pie. It's different. It's not bad. It's not bad, but you don't
I
get to say
want
I
everyone here
made.
to think that I made a pie, Marcy, and you just messed that up.
They know
Why can't
better.
you make it? You never let me make it.
You can barely make a noodle. They know good and dang well you didn't make a pumpkin pie. I did ask my mom. There were 2 desserts that I thought about during the holidays while I was locked up, and that was my grandmother's banana pudding
Mm.
and my mom's apple pie. Those are like staple desserts that they both have just made throughout my entire life, and they are rock stars at their recipes. And I asked my mom, "Are you making apple pies for Thanksgiving?" And she said, "Well, I could." And I said, "Oh, do you want to make one for me to take to Lockhart?" And she avoided that question. So yeah, we didn't get an apple pie, but maybe we'll get one for Christmas.
Well, I'm trying to think, at some point when we're all together again, I'm gonna message your mom, and I'm gonna say, "Can you please do the apple pie for us?"
She would do it for you.
Oh, she's a queen.
Everybody loves Toonchi.
Oh, it's so true. Like, it's, the Lord gifted me with charisma and charm, and sometimes it can feel a heavy burden, but I bring such joy.
So let's get to our subject. Let's get we're talking about surviving the holidays and kind of transitioning from being incarcerated to out here and facing the free world holiday season, which uh you know things are stressful this time of year, I think, on average. Even when you have plenty to give and plenty to have and bills are paid, it's still a level of stress. So then when you add any kind of uh, other stressful factors, it can get really scary. And coming out of prison, where we were kind of in our, I mean, once you're in there for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, that's what you become accustomed to. That's your comfort zone. Can I
Yeah.
say that we had a comfort zone in prison? But it was, we weren't in there thinking about wondering how we were gonna get everything done for Christmas, worrying about getting the house prepared, getting Christmas decorations up, or gifts for the kids, or, we weren't stressed about family that we don't normally see that we're going to be seeing. It was none of that, and then we're out here and it's just all thrown at us.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, right? Like, I think what was helpful for me was having my formerly incarcerated friends to make holidays with, because here's the deal, I love my family. I do, right? They never quite understood, and I'm not sure they understand now, that it's not that I don't want to be there at family functions. It's the level of stress that it causes me. And it's not just stress of I'm not used to this boom boom and seeing people that I don't see very often, or anything like that. I mean, that's some of it. But Marcy, I'm going to tell you, like, being being away for so many years, that I learned to celebrate the holidays with my chosen family, and I unfortunately learned to forget my real family. I completely detached from them. And I remember my first Christmas home when I was locked up the first time. It's been 10 years, right? Got locked up when I was 15, got out when I was 25, 26. I go to my first Christmas. I hear all of my cousins are grown, and there's my aunt and uncle, and my grandmother was still alive, and it was beautiful. It was at my aunt and uncle's house, and I just was so, like, I was such a ball of nerves, so stressed out. And my uncle, your grandmother makes incredible banana pudding. That was my favorite thing at the holidays that my Uncle David would make. And so I'm feeling pin up and weird. And I remember my Aunt Linda said, "Honey, do you want me to sneak you a little banana pudding?" Because they were still cooking and stuff like I used to when you were little. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to tell you, when I took a bite of that, and it was Christmas and it was music and everybody's laughing and I could smell all the food and hear my relative's voice, and I took a bite of that, I suddenly remembered all the feelings I had as a child. I remembered who they were. Like, it felt like and I just, my eye, like, I immediately started crying, and I was like, I'm going to step outside. Like, I suddenly remembered everything that I had shut off for 10 years. And it was deeply overwhelming. And so it still happens to me at family gatherings, and I can't bear it. I can't bear it.
You had to detach yourself in order to survive in there because when we stay fully connected in that way, um, it makes it makes life in there impossible, you know? So I can definitely see where you're coming from. I I Kim is watching from YouTube, and Kim says, "In prison, you don't have to worry about who you spend the holidays with." And I think for folks that aren't around a lot of family, or maybe don't have a lot of family, or maybe you're even in a new city or area where you don't have a lot of people around you, that you know, and I think that can be a really challenging time also. A lot of people feel a level of loneliness during this season. So thank you, Kim, for bringing that up. I was thinking about how my first couple of holiday seasons and Christmas, I was thinking about how I wanted to just try to make up. You know, my kids grew up while I was in prison. I missed so many Christmases, and, I remember just overextending credit cards, Brittany's poor little charge cards, you know? Um, Brittany had, like, Klarna and Afterpay, these apps that you can use to shop now, and then you pay it back a little bit and a little bit, at a time, and uh, just really trying to overdo it. Then on Christmas morning, my kids were like, we're all sitting around, and my kids were like, "Why is there so much?" And they're like, "Oh, mom's home." But it was really too much. But it was my effort to just try to make up for it. I just wanted to. You can't make up for it. So I think that's probably a tip, right? Is to just accept that the past is the past, and you don't get to go back and redo. Like, there's no do-overs. You don't get to go make different choices, or it doesn't work that way, but you can make new memories. And um something about traditions that we had before I left. You know, I was the one making those traditions for my kids, so when I was gone, those traditions died, like, that they were no more, and then I come home and navigating, um, kiddos that have spent their Christmases with other people the entire time. They don't necessarily wanna be there with mom on Christmas Eve, and, just really figuring out ways to make everybody have a good time together without it being too stressful. It's all so challenging.
Yeah. You know, I well, and the thing that I think for moms and grandmothers especially, because the women in the family are tasked with, whether that's by choice or society standards, to are pressured into providing this picture perfect holiday with food and gifts and decorations, and the family just shows up while she performs, and it's with love. I'm not saying that, but the toll it would take, that it does take on women in general who are caregivers. Those of us that have been on the inside, there is this other level of, I you know I don't know another word other than guilt, right? Of like, I need to show up bigger and better to make up. And you're right. You cannot make up. I was out walking, looking at Christmas lights the other night, Marcy, and I was reflecting on a relationship I had before I got locked up. Not the one where I kicked her window out. And I'm not talking about her, Amy. If you're watching, I'm sorry. Okay. But the the person I was with for several years that I lived with, and Christmas was her favorite time of year, and we took the cats to go get pictures. Oh well, no, we did the pictures at home, and then we would go places. We would think about taking them places to. We took them to go watch Christmas lights. We put them in the car and we drove around the neighborhoods. Like, she loved Christmas, and it was the happier times in my life. And we had a little home, and we had the cats, and we had Christmas, and so I was walking around looking at lights, and I was like, I fucked all that up. Like, I had happiness. I was an adult then. I wasn't a kid that messed up, and I was an adult, and I screwed all of that off. And those were the happiest memories that. And I was just reflecting that on the other night. Like, I wish I could go back. Like, I wish I could fix it. I wish that we could have those times again. And the truth of the matter is, it's gone. It's gone. And I think it's really hard when you do time. Time stands still on the inside. It feels like it's like you're coming out of a coma, and you've been asleep for years, and you wake up with that, expecting things and people to be the same, and they're not. And that's no more apparent than at holidays.
Yeah, no, for factual, and Shannon's watching from YouTube, and she's talking about a family pet passing away while her daughter's in prison, and losing things like pets and of course, family and friends, you don't really grieve that from the inside. Like, you acknowledge it, and you maybe are sad, but when you get home, there's still, like, you didn't see a funeral, and you didn't go through that, and there's still kind of this expectancy to see your loved one, because it is like you said, like coming out of a coma. Shamika Lewis is watching from Facebook as well, and she says, "My first holiday in prison was Thanksgiving," and she woke up that morning crying so hard because she had never been away from her family, so she had very strong family ties. And Shamika, I'm curious how it was getting out of prison. If I'm remembering correctly, you did a couple of years, so you were gone a couple of holiday seasons. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it's all of it's, uh, all of it's so challenging. Um, and no, you can't go back. You can't go back to pre-incarceration. You can't go back um, to those times. It's different. So many things change, new traditions are made, families Some families have like for me, my family was my grandparents and parents were doing the same thing, but my kids absolutely had completely different Christmas schedules, and it was wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that you brought up the point about like if family members are no longer here, well, and you never went to the funeral, you just heard about it while you were locked up, their absence is so glaring and so painful. And that too is part of the reasons, now that you've said that, really, that I had such a struggle. Like I don't, a part of me felt like, I remember like the story I just told y'all, like I was there looking at everybody like, I don't know these people. I don't know you. I know my dad and my mom here, but I don't know you people. And of course, when I ate that banana pudding and looked around, I remembered them, but they don't look anything like they did. And I remembered who I was, and it was just so painful. It was so painful that I can't bear to do it. So when I think about happy times at holidays, prison was a terrible place, but what I think about is Belinda making deviled eggs. I remember us playing games. I remember us dressing up, like Mandy said on the podcast last week, like you put on your best set, everybody is a little bit more, nicer and everybody looks good. It was just a day to just be happy and joyful, even though it was bittersweet. And I would long, when I got out the first time, I would long to be back in prison with y'all, not to be in a cage, but it was y'all. Like I was ripped away from my family. I made a new one, and then I was ripped away from them and given back to the old family. And I'm like, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah. Yeah, coming home after doing a good piece of time, like, coming home after 10 years, seeing, like, my cousins, my little cousins that were, like, potty training when I got locked up, like, they're grown and they're driving to the holiday, and, my little sweet cousin, she was 18 my first year home, and she came at Easter was my first holiday, and she's like, "Yeah, girl, we need to have lunch so we can catch up," and I remember thinking, "Catch up, baby, you were in kindergarten when I left, like, you're just gonna tell me your whole life? Like, that's what a catch up." It all felt so, yeah, wild, and I felt welcome, but I didn't there was a space between most of my family, like, not my immediate family, but there was a space, and I don't know I still don't know how to bridge that gap with a lot of folks. I don't know if it's bridgeable. Is that a word? And these are the family members that I really only see 3 times a year: Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And if you're only seeing people 3 times a year and then you've been gone for 10 with no communication, how do you come back from that? It's
You
it's
just
really
don't,
tricky.
Marcy. Right? Well, I mean, you can keep trying at it. I mean, but of course, my way to deal with stuff is pretty maladaptive and probably not well. And I know that it hurts my family that I don't always participate in holidays. I know it does. And that makes me sad. But they've never understood that they had 20 years. They had the first 10 years and they had another 10 years to do this. You know what I mean? And so to them, it's just another holiday and normal. They've watched the grandkids grow. They've all been there doing this. So of course they're happy for me to be there, for you to be there. And it's like, but you don't understand how glaring the loss is, how deeply it's felt. They're just happy that we're there and to see us. And I too, I mean, I always felt welcome, but I did not feel, I felt out of place. And I feel like kind of like on the walk, looking at the Christmas lights, just knowing and accepting that time is gone. And the
Yeah.
state, my behavior, I'm not going to blame my behavior on the state. The state has enough responsibility and stuff. But the carceral system took that from me and my family, right? Because we can hold accountability for the things Jennifer has done without severing relationships without ending attachment to loved ones, because that is exactly what I had to do in order. So I could not bear the longing. I could not bear it. I'd
Yeah.
rather be done with it, cut it off, and just pretend like these people are strangers.
I wanna come back to that thought, if my brain remembers to. Laurie's watching from YouTube, and she says, "What is the best way to help or be there for a loved one when they first get out? If you have loved ones, especially coming home this time of year." Um, you wanna go first?
Well, I certainly think it's being honest and transparent about things that have happened since they were gone. I came home, and I came home around holiday time, or right shortly after. Um, I found out all this stuff about what had happened in my family for 10 years that nobody told me about. I didn't know how to process any of that. It was a lot. I mean, I'm glad that it was finally told to me, but so I would be very transparent about things that maybe you weren't while the person was incarcerated, but just please. I know everyone is excited, including the person that just got out, but I think we all underestimate just how overstimulating all that noise and music and lights and people and social interactions really are on us.
Yeah,
Take
I
it
was
slow.
That's exactly. I was gonna say, let your loved one set the pace. So if your loved one, if you're not having your gathering where your loved one resides, um, I would identify a safe place for them to hide when necessary. Like if it's at grandma's house, I would say, "Hey, if it gets a little too much, just step into grandma's room and take a breath, take your time." Like, I would give them that option, and identify a safe space for them, and then if they choose to utilize that safe space, I would encourage you not to make them feel guilt or shame behind that, because they're already feeling those things. That's already embedded there, so I promise they're already worried and feeling all of those things. They don't need any additional, outside.
Well, yeah, and I love too that you bring up guilting and shaming, which I have to remember that people on the outside, I don't know, somewhere in my head, I thought, well, we're all those of us that were locked up, we're all the ones that are not well. Oh, people in the world, they're healthy, they communicate well, but they don't do any of that. They just didn't get arrested for whatever they've done in their life. Um, so I think the old patterns in mental health that our family has, our friends have, it shows up, right? I remember my poor dad. I love him so much, and I'm pretty sure he's not watching or
Oh,
listening.
daddy tune. Oh, daddy
Oh,
tune.
Dad. Oh, Dad. So I remember when I got released, and now this wasn't the holidays, but it was shortly thereafter. But I got released, and this was the first time. Okay, so I literally still feel like a 15-year-old, and I'm in the back of the car, and my parents are so excited. They're just so happy and joyful, and I was happy for that. But when anxiety is so bad, you can't feel or think or see or experience anything else. So I'm just sitting back there, like, just completely shell shocked, like struggling so hard. And I was just like, so my dad's pointing stuff out. Look at this over here, and we used to stop here, and they're just so happy. He was so happy I was home, but I did not look happy because my father turns around and slaps the back of the fucking seat and says, "Hey, knock it off, stop," because he could tell I was obviously freaked out, stressed out, overwhelmed, and in true Toon fashion, stop. Right?
That was
Instead of like, because he didn't know how he didn't know what to do. Like, why isn't she happy? Like, why? Like, I could tell it hurt him. And of course, my father's response anytime he feels sadness or hurt is just to be angry. Um, And I remember like I almost like I had to bite my cheeks to keep from crying.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a happy time, but especially if somebody just got out. Now, if they've been out a whole year, the holidays are still going to be overwhelmed. But Marcy, if they just got home 2 or 3 months ago and they're going into a big family Christmas celebration, they may not be excited the way you want them to be. So guilting them and shaming them because you don't know how to handle that is going to make it 1,000 times worse.
I will also say I got completely overwhelmed. Again, not during holiday season, but upon release, my grandmother apparently, like iPad and, iCloud, or I don't even know if it's Google, will make, like, slideshows of whatever you put in there. It'll just make
Mhm.
this huge, and my grandmother had prepared all of these, and it was like my kids growing up. Now, keep in mind, I had been seeing pictures, during my incarceration, but to see these slideshows, they'd just be playing in the living room, and then she'd be like, Look at that one," and it was ripping my heart out of my chest
Yeah.
to see these, and she had taken her time and gathering whatever she wanted to put in these, but I could not, and I still cannot, look at a lot of pictures from when I was gone. I can do a couple, but when it's like picture after picture after picture, just this, it makes me want to hang myself with my ponytail, seeing the things, all of the things together that I've missed. Um, so I would definitely not get offended, if they're not ready to look at a lot of pictures. We have another, question from Pam, watching from Facebook. As a mother, how can I help my son through these times he's missed while incarcerated? He lost, his grandpa. He lost his grandpa, which, sounds like he was her son's father's figure. And I will say this. This is my advice, and I lost 2 people while I was incarcerated. One was my great uncle who was elderly. That one was a little less shocking. He had been ill, and then I also lost, my cousin who was young, and that hit a little harder. My cousin that I grew up with, my she was too young and it was ugly, and, um, this is what my mom did to help me through that. She The same way that you cope with your family with the loss of a loved one, if those moments where you're sitting around telling stories, and kind of remembering, and there's laughter and tears in those stories. My mom was a master. I don't know how she knew to do this, but on phones calls and visit, she did that for me. And she would say, you remember when Ashley, your uncle and aunt brought her and she was 5, and remember you took her running and you had to carry her back, like, and that helped me process. I would say the last thing you would do is kind of what Toonch said earlier about withholding information. Um, I think oftentimes it's instinct to not tell the incarcerated person because they're already dealing with so much from being incarcerated, so you don't want them to know. You don't want that to be an added stress. Um, I think that can be really feel like a slap in the face, and when they get home, to have been left out of the loop, and then also it just be so overwhelming. So I would just encourage you, to process with your son.
Yeah. Yeah. Like even if your son knew about those deaths while he was incarcerated, to come home and nobody talk about it and act like it never happened or not address it, or they've already processed their grief, and it can feel really like I don't know how to describe it. Like, well, yeah, y'all have processed your grief, so like, but I haven't. and then now y'all process it and you're like, I don't want to touch it anymore. Right? Like, well, that leaves me holding the bag to try to figure out this on my own. So to be able to process through it again with your son, I would suggest a grief counselor, honestly, for something like that. I really would.
Thank you for that, Toonch, and thank you for that great question. Y'all are coming in hot with some really good questions in the chat, and we appreciate you so much. Debbie Green is watching from Facebook. She says that in prison, she did 20 years in Indiana, and we always did a huge pitch-in for the holidays. Everyone had to make sure their commissary order was heavy to cook for the holidays, and we did. We did. We had those spreads. It was the after party, the after the chow hall party. That was when it really went down, when everybody threw in, and making memories with folks. And Debbie, I'm sure you can agree if you did a 20 piece, making memories with your family on the inside, and really it just really were good times, and I miss
Yeah.
those. People ask me often, like, "Do you miss prison?" Well, I miss the people in there, and I definitely miss moments because, even though we were in this harsh environment, even though we were separated from, everyone that we cared about out here in the free world, we still made attachments in there, and we still had community, and we still found moments of joy and celebration, and for sure, the holidays inside, um yeah, you felt some of that for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have some childhood memories of holidays, right? But I just told y'all it's really hard for me to access them because they overwhelm me with pain, of bittersweet. But I do have wonderful holiday memories from prison and the women that I was incarcerated with. Marcy, we did a big spread one year in the day room. We had a good law. So we had this big picnic bench inside of the day room. So we spread it out, and everybody's like, "Well, make sure that Janet doesn't put her hands in everything because she digging her nose." Like, you know what I mean? Like that was real. Everybody was like, we need to have a server. Somebody needs to serve plates and bowls because nobody wanted Janet putting her hand in
Are you
in the
using
bag of
Janet's
chips."
real name? Knock it off if you are. You mean Janice?
So now I think this was before your time, but we had a pecani sauce. And if y'all that were locked up in TDCJ a long time ago, there was a pecani sauce that was in a red plastic bowl and it had a green lid. We would use that lid, Marcy, to clog the sink so we could wash clothes too.
Smart.
But so it was there for years and years and years. Okay. I loved it. It was my favorite thing on commissary. So we're having our spread and somebody says, "Jennifer, go get the pecani sauce." So I go to my cubicle and I come back out. I was in four dorm. I can see it right now. And I turned to run down the aisle and I slipped.
Mm.
And I slipped and hurt myself. But honey, I didn't let go of that pecani sauce. And everybody saw me on the floor and I was like this. And everybody made fun of me like for weeks after that. I was like, man, well, they called me Woody back then from Toy Story. Woody hit the floor. I fucked up my fucking hip and everything. But she didn't drop that pecani sauce. I didn't. It was for the spread. I wasn't
You're
fixing
like
to get that.
you wouldn't have been able to eat if that's what you were supposed to throw in. You'd have just been hungry.
I was just been hungry.
Sandy Wolf is watching from Facebook. She says, "When I first got out, I was overwhelmed. I needed quiet, time to process the difference between prison life and outside life. Family tried to help and push her to eat, get a job, just accept the world around me, but she just needed them to adapt, she needed them to let her adapt." And I think that that's an excellent sentiment. Folks need to be able to go at their own pace. There's some folks like Brittany, my wife, gets out of prison and she is on a bus the next day, uh, riding around South Dallas, filling out job applications. Within days, has a job at Sonic and is going to work. And within weeks, has her first car. And within the first month, has her first apartment. She's a different breed. We're not all built that way. I certainly was not. I certainly was not. I'll tell you what else I was not ready to do was drive. I was so scared to drive after I had not driven for 10 years,
Mm,
and people kept b they kept asking me like, "Are you ready to drive?" You tossing me the keys, and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." It took me a couple months
mm.
before I drove.
Well, Marcy, the first time I didn't know how to drive, right? I'd never drove before. So I'm learning to drive the first time I get out. And of course, again, oh, dad, he screamed at me several times. But I did learn to drive. And the second time, though, when I got out after 10 years, I thought, oh, okay, well, I used to drive all over the state, back and forth to Houston, the middle of the night, just boom, boom everywhere, right? I got in that car to drive to the parole office by myself for the first time. And I was so full of anxiety, I had a panic attack. Now, I couldn't stop because I was on my monitor, so I couldn't even pull off the side of the road. So I just gripped the wheel. I was so terrified of driving, and that took a long time for that to wear off.
But Daddy Toon was nice and calm
Oh,
teaching you?
well, the second time, he was like, I kept your car for you. Your license is valid. Leave me alone. You do it. But no, that first time he did teach me to drive. And he taught me well, but like, me, sometimes I'm like, what I don't understand what you're saying. And he would yell. He scared me. And that was always my dad's way of doing stuff is that if I scare you, this will keep you safe. He never scared us to hurt us. He scared us that if we had fear, then we would associate that him yelling and that fear with whatever just happened and we won't do it.
Right. I I will say, our friend Jerry is in the chat, and she's watching from YouTube, and she's talking about a couple of things, the loss of her mother while she was incarcerated, and she's also says, "Friends I made in prison mean a lot to me still," and her family doesn't really get it. They're always telling her, "Mom, you need to make new friends," and she's like, "Hey, I'm 82." And she spent a few years in the penitentiary, a few decades in the
Mhm.
penitentiary, I should say. So, yeah, our prison family and friends still do mean a lot. I remember, while my husband and I were still married and I was incarcerated, and he told me, "When you get home, you're gonna forget all those people." And he had done a year himself, but he did his year at an intake facility. It was like a shock probation.
Mm.
So, he did his 12 months and then went home on probation. Um, and he had like one or two friends from that he kept, but I remember telling him, "No, I how can I ever forget these people? How can I ever forget these people that have carried me through my darkest moments?" And I think people that aren't really in that situation don't understand it. And I also accept the fact that there are folks that go to prison and need to mentally leave that entire part of their lives behind.
Yeah.
And I respect that. So um, Debbie Green says 99% of my Facebook friends have DOC numbers.
Yeah.
Same, sister,
Same,
same.
girl. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the, I, when we talk about family and it's like, well, you grow up with your family, you're with them all the time. And I told Diane one day, I said, do you realize that you, Alexa, other Jerry, um, y'all were at the same unit for 20 years together. Okay? 20 years. Y'all saw each other in some capacity almost every day for 20 years. If that's not family, I don't, I mean, y'all are family. how do you spend that much time with another human being and not have an attachment, right? After being ripped away from your blood attachment, you have to form bonds with other people after 20 years. My goodness. And so what I love about our community, what I love and the intention behind, Lioness at its heart was, I remember, me and Diane would, when I first got out, talk about how do we have what we had on the rec yard and in the library. I miss that. Like you talked about earlier, like I longed for prison, not for the people. Like I wanted to go back. I remember getting dressed to go out one time in Houston, and all I could think of was, man, at 10:30, I would be at the back table while Tammy made tamales on Christmas. And this was Christmas. And so I love that we have done that. We have, Marcy. Like we have people all over the state. You talked about loneliness earlier. People get out. You're surrounded by people 24/7, and now you're by yourself, with your aging, grandpa. That's where you're living at, and no family, no resources. You go from this to that, it is incredibly despairing. So to be able to connect through social media and our organization and maintain those bonds, that's something that I think heals us every day.
No, I completely agree. I wanna acknowledge what Val's commenting. She's watching from Facebook because it kind of falls in line. She didn't really have family, too much supporting her while she was doing her time. She says, um none of that. So I knew when I got released, like, F you, it was all me, and I adjusted well. So she was able to set her own pace. She didn't really have any outside stimuli. But I am curious, Val, because I get moments of loneliness and I talk to a lot of my peers that have this issue of just like you were saying, Toonchi, we wake up at any given moment, any random thought I had or wanted to vocalize or bounce an idea off somebody, there was somebody available at all times. And then I'm home and I'm like by myself during the day. And there are lots of moments of loneliness, even with me living in this house full of craziness and grandmothers. Wonder folks, are you dealing with it? For a moment, it said it did. So if
Yeah,
if I
there was some
apologize.
of it was just robot noises.
Sorry about that, folks. It's rainy and cloudy here, and I'm out in the sticks and the satellites. So, yeah, yeah. How do you deal with that? How do you deal, Tunchi? You live just you and Taylor when you have those moments when you're
Well, I mean, when I got home and I was living with my parents, who were really elderly then, and I had that monitor, I essentially was alone quite a bit. I'd go to work and then come home, and I couldn't leave the house, and I had Diane. Diane set up on Messenger with me for hours at a time talking. That is how I managed that and survived. And I think, even now when I have these moments of restlessness and loneliness, I always said in prison I missed my family, but I was never lonely. I wasn't lonely in prison. I was sad. I was, messed up or whatever, but loneliness was never one of the things I felt in prison. And
it's
out
because
here, I feel it frequently. You know what I mean? What'd you say?
I was thinking you didn't do very many nights in solitary confinement, but you did in county jail.
I
You're
did.
just thinking of the majority of your time.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
certainly did have solitary
Well,
confinement
even
time.
even when I was in solitary in county jail, when I had lost my mind, when I got back in jail after getting out, I didn't feel lonely, right? Because there are people I know they're here. I can bang on the wall. I can look to the day room. Like I was restricted severely, but I still didn't feel lonely. Not even in those moments when you're laying on your bunk and staring at the ceiling. I may have felt reflective. I may have had that longing, but I still didn't feel it. Out here, there's many times I'm sitting here with Taylor. I look on the map. This is why I am the way that I am with all of my closest friends. I have all of y'all on my map so that I can open it and look at it in any time and say, there they are. I'm not just stalking y'all. I'm in your business. I mean, I'll do that too, but I open it to look at it because I'm like, they're right here.
All across
And
the
that's
state.
yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's how we cope. Do you think that it's the same for people that are in and out of prisons, like they weren't in one prison for a long time? I would say maybe not to the level, but they're still making bonds. I mean, I'm just thinking about my my sister who was at Plain State Jail with me, and we were only there together for 8 months, and how close I got to her. I mean, we were sleeping in the bunks right next to each other and eating all of our meals together and, even working, you know? So, I would say yes, you still make friends for sure.
Yeah. You're still the level of attachment, I think, is the level of shared experience, right? So we're all close in our friend group because we all have this shared experience about our time. You know, there's a handful of us that didn't do big time, but there is still something in those people that there is still this shared experience of what they experienced in county jail. And so, you know, I think that it just depends on, you know, the people that you are connecting with, right? Because if I was not well and I was still being boom, boom, whatever, or maybe if somebody's struggling in their addiction, they're attracted to people that are not dependable, I guess, or whatever. I think that we're all so connected is because we're just at a different place in our life too.
What a great point. Toonchi?
More Diane is so silly.
Diane says, "I'm here, barely awake. Look at the map." She's, watching on Facebook from Germany, so, it is a very different hour for her there, so thank you for joining us, Diane. We always love to see you on the Rec Yard. Um, Tunch, we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to thank everyone who has been so interactive with us in the chat tonight and asking such excellent questions. Thank y'all for liking the live. Thank you for sharing the live. We're all getting ready for the transition into YouTube only. So if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel on the Rec Yard Women's Prison Podcast, put it right there in your search bar, and we pop up. You want to follow us on YouTube, we will eventually be transitioning to YouTube only.
So as my dad would say, you better do it. You better do it right now. Right
Yeah.
now. Don't say you're going to do it later. Do it now.
Yes, yes, do that. And if you are listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasters, for those of you watching us on YouTube and Facebook, if you don't know it, we're all over the place. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, all of those things. Then please do leave us a review. We appreciate that so much. Kim, AIC's advocate, thank you for always hugely supporting our channel and our work. Kim's coming in hot saying 7 of you need to hit the like button. There are 7 people watching on YouTube who have not hit the like button. So do that before you log off. And thank you, Lori, for following us on YouTube. Thank you, Rayanne. Thank you, Debbie Green, Kim. We see you all. We appreciate you all. Jerry, yes, we see you watching from YouTube, sister. Any final 60 seconds or less, Toonchi?
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm so terribly sorry. Thank y'all for hanging out with us on the